Perfect. I hope you're all clear now. Yes. Yeah. So let's proceed discussion of two important standards, 402 and 3402. Even in the last November exam, every exam you see, many a times a question will come from this particular standards, any of these two standards. Okay. Sometimes both can also be tested if you're lucky enough. Now, 402 and 3402. First, pay attention to the heading carefully. 402, audit considerations relating to an entity using service organization. We are conducting audit of an enterprise, an entity, and that entity is using service organization services. At that time, what we need to consider specifically, that is what 402 is talking about. Means 402 is talking about auditor of the user entity. 3402, assurance report on controls at service organization. So this is a different standard. Again, there is a service organization, inside that there are some controls on that assurance report. That is 3402. Now in this particular standard, there are the terms, these are the terms which are very, very confusing for many. I made it in a simplest way to give you a brief idea about what exactly the terms are talking about. Now, before I discuss about this, I want to give you one example here. Suppose my company is a manufacturing company. I am a manufacturing company. For example, we are manufacturing. A best example which I have taken in class, HUL, Hindustan Unilever, which is manufacturing many cosmetics and all. Now, they had a tie-up with Amazon warehouse. Nothing but Amazon e-marketplace, e-commerce operator is there, right? So with them they have a tie-up. Now what is the tie-up? In the Amazon, this HUL will list all their products and all. This Amazon, HUL, Hindustan, this company, nothing but user entity we call. Amazon warehouse is nothing but service organization. Now Hindustan Unilever will maintain majority of their inventory which they manufacture in Amazon warehouse. This company inventory, some 70-80% of the company inventory is completely sold through online, directly through Amazon website. Now every time when Amazon receives an order, this company will send goods to Amazon will deliver to the customer. Why entire this process? Amazon told one option, we have a warehouse, you please keep all the goods manufactured in this warehouse, so the Hindustan Unilever can reduce warehouse cost. Fine. So Hindustan Unilever, whatever goods that they are manufacturing, they are storing it with Amazon. Inventory lying with third party, 501, that standard you can apply here. And not only that, 3402 also, 402 standard can also be applied here. What is 402 says about? Now Hindustan Unilever inventory is lying with Amazon. Now Amazon is maintaining inventory records completely, inflow, outflow, everything, and Amazon warehouse will periodically send Hindustan Unilever stock statements. They will periodically send stock statements. Based on these stock statement, Hindustan Unilever in the balance sheet valuation will be done. That's it. This is the entire the arrangement between Amazon warehouse and Hindustan Unilever. Suppose now I am doing audit of HUL. Getting it? I'm doing audit of HUL. For me, 402 standard will apply. Now 3402. Now this Amazon warehouse is maintaining inventory records, inventory of various third parties. One of the third parties our client, Hindustan Unilever. Now we want to know, as an auditor, we want to know whether Amazon is maintaining proper inventory records, whether Amazon is maintaining proper internal controls on the inventory. We want to know. Now we want to visit the Amazon warehouse. Amazon warehouse is not permitting us. Sir, Amazon warehouse told, sir, like you, there are many other vendors, sir. Now, Hindustan Unilever is there, some other companies there, X companies there, Y companies there. Their auditors also want to visit me. I cannot permit every one of you to visit and check. When will I do business? Amazon warehouse replied that. So, but we want to know, we as an auditors of Hindustan Unilever want to know whether Hindustan Unilever inventory is properly safe or not with the Amazon warehouse. We want to know. For that, what Amazon warehouse did, they appointed one special auditor called service auditor. They appointed an auditor called service auditor. He will give a report. Called SOC report, systems and organization control report, which is also called as type 1 report and type 2 report. The service auditor will give either type 1 or type 2. Okay, he will give some report, sir. So what report? He will give a report on controls maintained at Amazon. Controls maintained at Amazon warehouse, where these controls will affect various user entities, third parties. So controls maintained at Amazon warehouse, are they proper? Are they designed correctly or not? So whether user entity financial user entity, financial items and all, whether Amazon is protecting correctly or not, this auditor will verify and then give a report to you. Now user auditor using this reports, getting it, 402 standard will apply. Now service auditor is appointed, right? He should give type 1 report, type 2 report, right? How to give this type 1 report, type 2 report, what service auditor has to do, what is his responsibility, that is covered under 3402 standard. If any of you understand this example, that's it, standard is done. Typically speaking, the standard is done. This example, if you don't understand and read blindly the standard without understanding the background, there is no point of reading that standard. Now that's about the standard. I hope you are able to understand clearly. Fine. Yeah. Now let's look at, now there are some keywords which are involved in this particular topic 402 and 3402. There are some keywords. Like, what are the keywords exactly? Just a minute. Yeah, what are the keywords exactly? Control set service organization, because SAE 402, considerations relating to an entity using service organization, audit report on control set service organization. You see, control set service organization, what does it mean? Control set service organization means what? Control description. There is a word called control description. And control objectives and related controls. What is it? Another word? Control objectives and related controls. Hindustan Unilever auditor want to know whether controls implemented at Amazon warehouse, are they proper or not? Now for that, what I want to know first, what controls they implemented, that is control description. Why is that control, that is control objective. What exactly they implemented, related controls. This entire, these 2 points will be called as description of system. This is called as what? Description of system. You know, assurance report he will give, right? Service auditor will give assurance report, right? Assurance report on description of system. Just like description of system is like financial statements. In normal financial statement audit, we will give audit report on financial statements, right? But here we will give assurance report on description of system. Description of system means what? What control they implemented, what are the objectives, what processes exactly implemented, that is called related controls. Now in the standard, they will talk about 2 types of reports, type 1 report and type 2 report. What is type 1 report? Type 1 report is a report on both, by the way, there are 2 types of report, type 1 report and type 2. Both are regarding reasonable assurance only. In both the reports, we will provide reasonable assurance only. Who will provide? 3402. Service auditor will give type 1 report, type 2 report. Service auditor will give this report. Okay. What he will give? Service auditor will give reasonable assurance on whether on the description of system, as well as he will give a reasonable assurance on whether controls, like they have given objectives and controls, right? Whether these objectives and controls, are they suitable? What control we implemented, is it suitable for the objective or not? Yeah, so suitability of the controls to meet control objectives, getting it? So we will give a report on description of the system, suitability of the controls to meet control objectives. If at all we are giving report on what description of the system, whether system is described correctly or not, and whether the controls are suitably implemented or not, if at all we are only talking about these 2, that at a particular date we are talking about, then that's a type 1 report. Suppose we are talking about description of system, we are talking about suitability of controls, we are also talking about operating effectiveness of the control. You see here we are only talking about what system is described, whether it is suitable or not. Suppose we are also talking about operating effectiveness, and where in the report what controls they tested. How do we know whether a control is operating effectively? Service auditor will do testing under 3402, whether a control is operating correctly or not, whether a control is operating effectively or not, service auditor will do something called testing. So the testing related information, reporting on operating effectiveness, reporting on test of controls performed, if entire this is covered in a report, then that report is called as type 2 report. This is called SOC2 audit. We also call this as SOC2 audit, where when we are giving type 2 report, we don't give report on a specified date. We generally give the report throughout the specified period. Generally type 2 reports are given for throughout the period, whether controls are operating effectively throughout the period. Then you will also talk about test of controls throughout the period. Generally in our EO class and all, we discuss about real reports. We take some reports and then discuss all that. But now this is a revision class before exam, that too we don't have that much time. We have to revise quickly. Okay, that's it. I hope you are able to understand. Now let me directly first discuss 3402, then we'll go to 402. 3402, assurance report on controls at service organization. Okay, what is this assurance report? You know, here Amazon has appointed one separate auditor, service auditor. He may be the statutory auditor, he may not be statutory, that doesn't matter. Okay, Amazon has appointed one service auditor. Now that service auditor has to give a report on controls implemented at Amazon, nothing but controls implemented at service organization, which will affect user entity financial reporting. These controls will affect user entity financial reporting. Suppose if Amazon is not maintaining inventory records correctly, if the controls of inventory are not correctly done, then reporting of inventory details to the user entity will be wrong. If reporting of information is wrong, user entity financial statements might be materially misstated. So that's it. So here, so that's why Amazon appointed one service auditor. Dear service auditor, we implemented controls on inventory belonging to third parties, whether these controls are operating effectively, whether the controls that we implemented, what controls we implemented, we developed a document. So on that, please give a report. That's what exactly Amazon is asking the service auditor. Now this SAE is applicable. Now this SAE is applies only if service organization is responsible, you know, for making assertion about, okay, it's okay, I think that applicability is not a big deal. Non-applicability is most important. Non-applicability, what is it? Suppose, you know, Amazon appointed one auditor. Sir, we have so many controls in our organization. Please come and report on operating effectiveness of controls. You please come and check our controls and give a report. Where this report is used by Amazon only. Suppose if Amazon, you know, Amazon appointed auditor and the auditor is giving a report on controls, the user is also Amazon only. This standard does not apply. When the standard is applicable, Amazon appointed service auditor, where he will give a report on controls. That report will be forwarded to third parties. We call them as user entities. Then only the standard is applicable, where user auditor has to only report whether service organization controls are operated as described. Whatever controls Amazon described, no, whether are they operated as per the Amazon description or not. If at all, he just have to report on that. Where the report is not given to any user auditors, user entities and all, this standard does not apply. Or where, you know, this standard does not apply, where the user auditor has to report only on controls at service organization unrelated to financial reporting of user entities. Yes, no, where you are giving a report on controls at Amazon, service auditor is appointed, where he is giving a report on Amazon. Okay, Amazon related some controls. These controls are unrelated to user entities. Then also this standard does not apply. Indirectly, when this standard is applicable, this standard is applicable when service organization appointed auditor, where he is reporting on controls, getting it, where that report is related to user entities, where that report is used by user entities and their auditors. 3402 will apply only when 402 point of view user entity auditor is asking this report. In that context only 3402 engagement will apply. Suppose if a company voluntarily appointed one auditor, service auditor, okay, one auditor. First of all, we will call him a service auditor only when 3402 standard applies. Suppose a company appointed an auditor voluntarily. Sir, please check all our controls in our organization, give a report. Compliance auditor they appointed, for example, where he has to check the controls and then give a report, compliance report. Where we are not giving this report to any third party and all, this standard does not apply. That's it. Very important applicability of the standard. MCQs they might be asking. Now, who is a service organization? Service organization is a third party organization which is providing services to user entity. Amazon warehouse is providing services to Hindustan Unilever. User entity is what? Who is using services of service organization? Hindustan Unilever is maintaining their entire inventory at Amazon warehouse. So Hindustan Unilever is a service organization. Now, why controls at service organization are important? Why controls at service organization? Now, Amazon is implementing so many controls relating to inventory. Why are they important to user entity? Very simple. The controls which are inventory related controls, if these controls are not functional, if they are not functioning properly, or if the controls are not correctly implemented, if the control design is inadequate, suitability is not proper, control is not proper, it will result into reporting of wrong inventory. If reporting of wrong inventory to user entity will affect their financial statements, material misstatement. Yeah. So, impact. controls at service organization may be relevant to user entity financial reporting, as these controls sometimes may relate to presentation, disclosure and auditing evidence. So that's it. Here we have given some example called payroll example. You can also see that payroll example. Okay, scope of the controls at service organization under 3402. What is the scope of the control? Controls includes controls over user entity information system maintained by service organization. Amazon is maintaining an information system, inventory records, which is relevant to user entity. Yes or no? So that is only included in the scope of control, and other internal control component at service organization related to this. Controls related to description system of relevant. However, remember, controls of service organization for their own preparation and presentation of financial statements are not relevant in this standard. Even Amazon is preparing financial statements. For that reason, they have some financial controls and all. That is not relevant in the standard. In the standard, which controls are relevant? Service auditor. Which controls are relevant for the service auditor? Those controls which are influencing user entity information system, user entity financial reporting. If that is affected because of the controls of service organization, those controls are relevant for the service auditor. Now ultimately, remember, which control is relevant in the service organization? There are so many controls. Some controls are for their personal purpose, service organization. Some controls are user entity related. Now, which controls are relevant for the service auditor, which is not relevant, is a matter of professional judgment. That's it. User auditor means the auditor who audits and reports on the Hindustan Unilever user entity. Service auditor is a professional accountant. He is a professional accountant in public practice. He is a professional accountant in public practice who, at the request of service organization, provides an assurance report on its control. Service organization requested the auditor to give a report on controls at service organization, and that report is forwarded to user entity. For that reason, we are appointing that auditor is called a service auditor. What is his objective? Very simple. His objective: ensure that service organization system and controls, they are fairly presented. Like verify, you need to verify whether service organization description of its system, service organization prepared one description of system, that system is forwarded to Hindustan Unilever, whether the description of the system is it presenting design and implementation throughout the period or at specified date in a type 1 report. And you need to assess one more responsibility of service auditor. Service auditor has first responsibility whether description of system is fairly representing the actual system implemented. 2, whether the controls related to control objectives were they suitably designed throughout the specified period, whether control objectives and the actual controls implemented, are they suitable or not, we need to check. Further, in case of a type 2 report, most of the service organization, they will go for type 2 audit, type 2 report only. They don't go for type 1 report. In reality, you rarely find type 1 report, you only find type 2 generally. Okay, if included, determine whether controls operated effectively to achieve control objectives throughout the period. So every process will have some objective. See, Amazon has implemented so many processes. One process is, for example, only when the goods are actually received and goods are actually delivered, inventory record will be updated. Because of this particular process, inventory record quantity accuracy can be maintained. If quantity accurately is there, automatically financial reporting will be accurate. So this is the control objectives. Getting it? And where service auditor will provide a report based on service auditor's findings in accordance with these objectives. So objectives are 3: verify description of the system, verify whether control objectives are suitably designed, and third one, in case of type 2 report, whether they are operated effectively, and finally you need to provide a report. So accordingly, there are 2 types of reports, assurance reports. There are 2 types of assurance reports which a service auditor will provide: type 1 report, type 2 report. Type 1 report is what? First of all, service organization description. First of all, there is a description of system. There is a document which talks about what exactly the system implemented, and a written assertion by service organization. Service organization will give written representation in the description. What written representation? They will say that description is presenting the real system implemented and controls are suitably designed at a specified date. Service organization is giving one document inside that what controls they implemented, what controls they have designed, what controls they have implemented, whether they're suitable or not. They're giving all those descriptions. Getting it? And we, service auditor, now what service audit, what is type 1 report? Type 1 report is service auditor report. This is actually type 1 report, this is type 2 report. This is about the report. Okay, what is type 1 report? Type 1 report is a service auditor's assurance report about reasonable assurance about matters covered in. So I will read I will read service organization management description letter document, all that. Whatever I read, no, is it real or not, I will verify, and then I will give a type 1 report. Now, whereas in a type 2 report, no, service organization management, no, they will also mention that they will in written, they will assert that controls are operating effectively throughout the period. So service organization management is saying controls are operating effectively. I need to give a report on the description. So for that, what I will do, I will give reasonable assurance, and I will also do test of controls in order to know whether controls are operating effectively or not. So accordingly, type 2 report will contain description. One more paragraph in the type 2 audit report. In type 2, we will give assurance report, right? Let's use the word assurance report. We will give a type 2 assurance report, right? In that report, we will have one more para. The test of controls performed and results thereof. Like that, one more paragraph will be there. Okay. Then how do I proceed with this engagement? But before I go into that, let me directly tell you about modified opinion. When service auditor will give a modified opinion, when service auditor will give modified opinion, directly they can ask you this as a 4 marks question. Okay, service auditor will give modified opinion if he concluded that description is not fairly, like what Amazon in reality, what controls they implemented and what they are showing in the description document, they're not matching. Controls were not suitably designed. They designed some controls, but they're not suitable for the objectives, or controls are not operating. If controls are not operating effectively and I'm supposed to give a type 2 report, then also I will give a modified opinion. Or I am unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. If service auditor is unable to obtain evidence, then also we will give modified opinion. Then the service auditor opinion shall be modified and assurance report must clearly explain the reasons. Further, service auditor has to document. He must prepare documentation where an experienced auditor can understand how you planned the work, what is the result, and significant matters. You know, experienced auditor should understand all these three. In such a way, service auditor should document. So straight away, this can be asked as a 4 marks question. Documentation can be asked as a 3 marks question. Next. And I told you, this itself can be asked as a straight question for 4 marks. Write about additional reporting requirements in case of type 2 report. Generally in a type 2 report, no, there will be another section, separate section on control testing. In type 2 report, title will be there, address will be there, you know, identification of controls, so much will be there, you know, opinion section will be there. Apart from that, there will be another separate side heading. Okay, that side heading will be test of controls performed and the results. Here you need to clearly state which controls tested, whether testing is on a sample basis 100%, what kind of testing you did, you know, and you should also report deviations. If deviations are identified, specify the sample size and what deviations exactly, describe that. Even if the control objectives are achieved, sometimes no deviations will be there. What control they implemented, that control might not be working effectively, some deviation might be there, but because of this there is no MMS, because of this there is no fraud, because of this there is no error. Even if there is no error or fraud, control is deviated, right? Control is not operating effectively, right? That has to be reported. That's it. So these are the additional reporting requirements, which itself can be asked as a straight question. Then this is regarding service auditors assurance report. This is not a big deal. So this is not required. It's okay. I think in this there is nothing important. By the way, date of service auditor report, it must not be earlier than the date when service auditor has obtained sufficient appropriate evidence. That's okay. That's a normal thing. It's okay, no issue. So that is not important. Further, representation point, most important, straight away 4 marks question. You know, when a service auditor is conducting, you know, when a service auditor is providing assurance on controls at service organization, in the process of that work, service auditor should obtain some written representations. What are they? Obtain written representations from a service organization stating, reaffirm the assertion regarding description of the system. The described system, no, get once again a representation that the system description is correct or not. Further, you should get a representation that all relevant information is given to you. Further, you need to get a representation that management has disclosed the service auditor. Service auditor is asking declaration from company. Dear company, give a declaration that you showed everything to me. What exactly? Non-compliances, frauds, deviations, which will impact user entity, because my report is being used by user entity. So you have a responsibility to show me what are all non-compliances you did. You know, design deficiencies in controls which management is aware of. Instances where control fail, where and all control fail, when and all control fail. They will have a list of control failures, exceptions reports that they need to disclose. Subsequent events that could impact assurance report. For all of this, I must specifically obtain written representation from management of service organization. This is important question. Then now acceptance and changes in terms of engagement. This is most important, another important question in this particular standard. So how can I proceed with this engagement? First, service auditor, no, whenever a company requested you, a service organization requested you to act as a service auditor, immediately you should not accept blindly. SQC says you should check competence and capability. That's what once again here they highlighted. The service auditor must ensure capability and competence before accepting. Verify criteria used to describe the system. Some COSO framework, COCO framework, COBIT framework, some framework company will use for controls related description preparation. Okay, so whether the criteria prepared for, whether the criteria followed by the management of service organization to prepare description of system, is it suitable and available for user entities and user auditors? Check out and see that the engagement scope and system description of useful, like service organization is appointing me to do audit of some controls, right? Whether these controls are relevant to user entities, check out. If service organization requests a scope change, suppose now after you were appointed, they are asking you to change the scope, see whether it is reasonably justification is there or not. So very important. So criteria, it's okay, I think that is enough. That's enough. Okay, so these 2 points are important. That's it. 3402 standard is completely done. That's it. Very simple. The standard is very simple. I don't know how many of you thought it's so complex, so much is there. No, it's very simple. Now having understood 3402, now we'll go back to 402 standard. Okay, 402. Now 402 is a little more complex compared to 3402. Now look at this 402. Just 1 minute. I hope you're now you got now little clarity on what exactly 3402 is about. Just comment, just give your comments. I'll be happy to see whether you are understanding properly or not. Whatever questions I'm touching, wherever I'm saying that this can be asked as a 4 marks question or 3 marks question, 2 marks question, if you're studying that confidently, if you're revising that confidently, sufficient. Very tough standards actually. 402 content is simple, but the terminology used is very tough in the standard. 402 audit considerations relating to an entity using service organization. Fine. So now I am the auditor of HUL. I want to ask Amazon, dear Amazon, our HUL inventory so much is there with you, I want to come and physically verify. For that Amazon told me, sir, you can't come physically, sir, we have so many third parties like you. If everybody comes physically, how Amazon will do business? Fine, that their concern is right, but I want to know as a HUL auditor, my inventory is there with the Amazon, whether the inventory is maintained in a proper good condition, existence and condition proper or not, whether quantities maintained properly, because records are maintained by them. I want to know whether they're maintained properly. For that what Amazon told, sir, don't worry, we will give you type 1 report, type 2 report. What is type 1 report, type 2 report? Sir, don't worry, you are the HUL auditor, right? You want to know whether our inventory records are maintained correctly, whether your inventory records are maintained correctly here or not, you want to know, right? For that we appointed one auditor, sir. He already gave a report on whether we are maintaining reports correctly or not. I will forward that report to you. The service organization is forwarding me type 1 or type 2 report. Now in this context, what is my responsibility exactly? What are all I need to consider? That's what 402 standard is talking about. Now if you see in this diagram, description of system, you see description of system, it includes complementary user entity controls. There is something called complementary user entity controls. What is complementary user entity controls? See, whenever our company Hindustan Unilever, whenever we are outsourcing some work to them, we also have to maintain some records, right? Regarding whatever we are outsourcing there, some incidental records and all we need to maintain. So for that we need to implement some controls, right? These controls are called as complementary user entity controls. Complementary user entity controls are controls implemented by user entity, which is assumed by service organizations things we implemented, and accordingly they will plan their services. Sometimes they are correct, but if user entity controls, complementary user entity controls, if they are not implemented effectively, misstatement will happen in financial statements because of our client only. Now you need to check, you need to know, I mean sometimes 315 standard says we have to verify operating effectiveness of our controls as well as service organization controls. That time complementary user entity controls, are they operating effectively or not, also we have to know. Next, fine, I'll come back to it. Now tell me, Services provided by service organization, are they relevant to user entity financials? Yes, they are relevant. When they're relevant? When they're relevant. A service organization services affect user entity financial reporting if they impact any of the following. You know, if at all service, Amazon is providing me services, right? Some services they are providing to HUL, right? If at all those services impact some transactions in the HUL, getting it, or if they're impacting procedures where accounting is affected, or if they are impacting accounting records, or if they're impacting events and conditions related to financial statements, or they're impacting financial reporting process, or they're impacting journal entries, non-recurring entries, unusual entries, in all these cases service organization systems, service organization services are deemed to be relevant to user entity user auditor. Straight away a 4 marks question. You know, what are the factors the auditor has to consider to identify whether service organization services affect user entity financial reporting? You know, service organization services, they are affecting user entity financial reporting. Then only those services I am bothered as a user auditor. That's it. So objectives of the user auditor. Here, types of service auditor report, exactly I already spoke. You know, type 2 report, type 1 report. Type 1 report is what? It's a report by service auditor where he is providing reasonable assurance including opinion on description of the system, objectives and related control, suitability on a specified date. Whereas in a type 2 report, it's a report by service auditor giving reasonable assurance on, you know, opinion on the description of system, control objectives, suitability, operating effectiveness. Not only that, in a type 2 report, additionally operating effectiveness will be there as well as E point. Okay, description of service auditor's test of controls and results will also be there. So in a type 2 report, what test of controls he performed, that will also be mentioned. Then understanding of the services, this was asked in November 24 exam already, but don't think, many of you will think since November 24 it asked, it will not be asked once again. There is no guarantee like that. Okay, so understanding of the services provided by service organization. So as a user auditor, I must understand what kind of services they are providing to me. First, what is the nature of services? Are a Hindustan Unilever inventory is maintained in the Amazon warehouse, that inventory physically they're maintaining, records also they're maintaining. So understand the nature of service, understand nature of services, and what is their significance to the user entity, what is their effect on the user entity controls. And you know, this you can get an understanding from this information, you can get from user manuals, service organization and user entity will have some contract, all that. Okay, materiality also understand. Second thing that you should understand is materiality with the transactions processed. Our client Hindustan Unilever inventory balance sheet, 40% of the balance sheet asset total value is inventory. Inside this inventory, 90% of the inventory is with the third party. So what is the materiality of the transaction processed by service organization? If the transactions are immaterial, yes or no, they might still be significant due to the nature. Okay, fine. This point is not required from exam point of view. This first point is enough. And then second factor, first understand the nature of services service organization is providing. 2, materiality of the transactions affected by services provided by service organization. 3, degree of interaction. Understand the degree of interaction between the user entity and service auditor. Generally, how, you know, this refers to how much control the user entity has over service organization processing, how far we are influencing, how far they are influencing. Relationship, also understand, is there any relationship between HUL and Amazon warehouse? Are they related parties? Identify. Understand the relationship between user entity and service organization, like look at the contractual terms and conditions, look at what services they are providing, see whether there is a huge dependence or not. Try to identify any related party relationship is there or not. If related parties, no, 550 standard also will apply. Next, then see, obtaining an understanding of internal control relevant to audit. Generally, whenever we are doing audit, no, whatever internal control relevant to audit, we must obtain understanding. This is what mentioned in 315 standard. Yes or no? So the user auditor evaluate, design and implementation of relevant controls at user entities. So that is our responsibility. But some transactions are processed by service organization. Related to that, controls are also maintained at service organization. Therefore, I need to understand controls at service organization. Since I want to understand controls at service organization, I am taking type 1 and type 2 report. Simple as such. Okay, so the user auditor get a sufficient understanding of nature and significance of services provided by service organization and what is their effect on the user entity internal control. What exactly the nature of service provided by them, what is their impact on the user entity internal control, get an understanding. Sometimes we are unable to obtain understanding from the user entity. When I'm interacting with user entity, they are unable to explain me clearly what exactly they're doing. In such a case, I will directly ask type 1 type 2 report, obtain type 1 type 2 report. Suppose type 1 type 2 report service organization does not prepare or they're not sending me, then I will contact organization through the user entity to obtain necessary information. If at all still I'm not getting information, then I will visit the service organization, and perform procedures to gather necessary, or I will send another auditor to provide necessary information. I will use another auditor and send him there, ask him to get the entire information and then send it back to me. So this itself can be asked as a 4 marks question. Wherever I'm telling marks can be asked, that only is important. This itself can be unable. If user auditor cannot obtain sufficient understanding from user entity regarding services provided by service organization, then user auditor can request type 1 type 2 report. If type 1 type 2 report is not there, contact the service organization. If they're not responding, visit the service organization. If you don't have time to visit, or if it is difficult for you to visit, it is there at a very remote location, arrange another auditor there to visit service organization. Any of this can be done. Then okay sir, type 1 type 2 report they gave, sir. Type 1 and type 2 reports by user auditor of user entity using type 1 report or type 2 report. So when you're getting type 1, first before start reading it, type 1 report, type 2 report is given by service auditor, right? Who is he? Is he a chartered accountant like you? Is he also competent professionally? The service auditor's competence checkout. What is his independence checkout? Is this guy independent from the service organization? Amazon appointed service auditor. What is the relationship between them? If they are unrelated to each other, then that report I will trust. Adequacy of standards. Service auditor gave type 1 type 2 report, right? By following which standards he conducted that work? Check out. He also followed 3402, then happy, you will trust it. And if auditor is decided, okay fine, I first decided service auditor's professional competence, independence, capability, competence, standards, all that. I felt he's very genuine. Now I decided to use his report. Then I will evaluate whether description and design of controls is as at a particular date or is it for a particular period. Is it relevant for the audit? Okay. So now service audit report is there. Amazon has given type 1 type 2 report. I am doing audit for 24-25 financial year. Amazon he has given type 1 type 2 report of 21-22, 3 years back report. That is not relevant for me. So evaluate whether description design of controls is for a date or period. Whatever the date, for whatever the period type 1 type 2 report is given, is it appropriate for our audit? Check out. Okay, there is a in 315 there is a requirement. Once in 3 years we have to do an ad hoc complete review of internal control system. It's already more than 3 years. Type 1 type 2 reports were older than 3 years, may not be useful for me. Next, assess sufficiency, appropriateness of evidence provided by the report, all that. Then complementary user entity controls. Suppose I'm the auditor of HCL, I identified complementary user entity controls. If that is the case, you need to check whether user entity has designed and implemented complementary user entity controls. What is a complementary user entity controls? This itself can be asked as a 3 marks question. These are the controls which service organization assumes. Service organization assumes. What they assume? They assume that we implemented. Okay, that will be implemented by user entity to achieve control objectives, and they are identified by the service organization description of the system. Fine. Finally, responding to the assessed risk of MMS in relation to services provided by service. Whether check if sufficient appropriate evidence is available from the record selected user entity. If not, perform additional procedure to obtain necessary information. If user auditor's risk assessment expect that controls a service organization is operating effectively, actually this is not that required. It's okay. This is bit tough. If at all those of you have not studied, leave it. It's okay. No problem. Using a type 2 report as audit evidence. This was also asked many times, a 4 marks question. When user auditor decided to use type 2 audit report, type 2 report as an audit evidence, what extra points you should consider? Assess whether description of the system, design of the system, operating effectiveness of, is it for a particular date or is it for a particular period appropriate for the audit. In type 1 also we have seen similar point. So type 2 report they have given, when the type 2 report is prepared, for what period it was addressing, is that period, is that date relevant for my audit? Suppose if the type 2 report is very old report, I may not use it. Next, complementary. the user auditor must determine whether complementary user entity controls are identified by service organization are the relevant. If so, understand whether user entity has designed and implemented the control. If required, test the operating effectiveness. So when you're using type 2 reports, these are the type 2 report talks about controls implemented by service organization at service organization. Now in the description document, no, complementary user entity controls also they spoke about. Oh, our client also has to implement some controls relating to this outsourcing activity. Whether these controls are operating effectively or not also you should check. So when you're using a type 2 report, first to look at when that report is belonging to. Is that report appropriate for my audit, relevant for my audit? 2, if complementary user entity controls are also there, see whether they are operating effectively or not. And the user auditor must evaluate the time period covered by test of controls and time lapsed since the last testing. This type 2 report talks about some test of controls where when they tested long ago, see whether the test can be relied or not. And the user auditor must assess whether test of controls performed by service auditor and the results are they relevant to the assertions in the user entity financials. So by the way, I'm talking about inventory. So and the service auditor has also performed some test of controls on inventory. Are they relevant or not? Check out. Then suppose no, you identified, okay, so user auditor, no, I will ask our management, I will ask our client HUL, dear HUL, did service organization reported you any material misstatement in inventory records, any non-compliance with loss, any uncorrected misstatements, any frauds? Remember a similar thing, service auditor also will get a written representation from service organization that any frauds, non-compliances, MS, all that. Yes or no? Here user auditor will ask user organization, user auditor will ask user entity, dear user entity, did service organization intimated you any frauds, any non-compliances, any material misstatement? Please give me. And the user auditor must assess how such matters affect nature, timing of further audit procedure. Finally, this is very important. You know, regarding this, one exceptional question is there. In your ICI, test your knowledge question number 13 is added. Inside this, what happened, you know, the type 2 report was provided by service organization, which was based on carve-out method. That method and all irrelevant, okay? Akram, while reviewing unmodified report, or you see this one, unmodified report drafted by his assistant, found that a reference has been made to the work by service auditor. Oh, we are the user auditor, right? We are giving audit, we are giving opinion on Fab Limited. You know, we are the auditors of Fab Limited. On Fab Limited, our audit firm decided to give unmodified opinion, and assistant already prepared the audit report with unmodified opinion. Inside that, service auditor name is given. Not permitted. You see now, you know, suppose no, after doing all this, no, in which context, services of service organization our client is using, no, on inventory related thing, on inventory we decided unmodified opinion is required, enough. We decided to give a positive opinion, unmodified opinion. In such a case, in audit report, can I talk about service auditor, service organization, all that? No, prohibited. The user auditor should not refer to the work of service auditor if audit report is unmodified unless mandatory in law. If required, the report must clarify. Suppose no, sir, law says it is mandatory, sir, that's why we are reporting, sir. If at all you are talking about service auditor, your report clearly state that reference will not reduce user auditor responsibility. Just because I'm talking about service auditor, that doesn't mean my responsibility is reduced. Ultimately, inventory related controls are operating effectively or not is my responsibility only. Next, suppose no, after using type 2 report, I got to know that inventory records are materially misstated. To that extent, financial statements are materially misstated on inventory. I requested management to rectify inventory valuation. They did not. So I decided to give modified opinion on inventory. Now I have to explain in basis for qualified opinion, basis for adverse opinion, basis for disclaimer of opinion. Why I gave a modified opinion, I have to give reasons. No. To make the people understand the reason behind my modification, I can refer about type 1, type 2 report, service audit report, all that. Again, just because you are referring in basis for modified opinion section regarding service audit report, that does not reduce your responsibility. That fact you should mention. The user auditor must modify the opinion according to 705. If they cannot obtain sufficient appropriate evidence about services provided by service, or you are unable to obtain evidence, then you will modify. 2. If reference to service auditor work is relevant for modification, please clarify that reference does not reduce auditor's responsibility. One, when you are unable to obtain evidence, no, you give modified opinion, or you got an evidence and concluded material mistake, that time also you'll give modified opinion. If reference to service auditor work is relevant, see, you want to tell the people why you modified. I modified because service audit report I could not obtain, or service audit report I obtained, I found a material misstatement based on their report. I want to tell the reason. For that, for explaining reason purpose, you can refer about the service auditor's name, and such a reference will not reduce the user auditor responsibility. Now in this case, you know, on Fab Limited, you know, the auditor is there. Who is the auditor here? Akrama something, yeah, CA Akram, while reviewing unmodified report which is drafted by the assistant, found that a reference has been made. Are you are saying unmodified audit report, reference is given to service auditor, all that, that is not correct. Here you see, in the view of the above, contention of Akram in removing reference to work done by service auditor in order, you know, because it's an unmodified, cannot refer to be, yeah, correct. So that is proper. Yes or no? Is in order. Is in order. In order means what? It's proper. That's what they mean to say. So the user auditor shall not refer to work of service auditor in the user auditor's report containing unmodified opinion unless required by law. If at all such a reference is required by law, user auditor shall indicate that reference will not reduce the responsibility of the user auditor. That's it. 402 3402 is completed. 45 minutes it took. It's okay. Fine. I covered decently at least. That's it. This is a newly added question here. No, carve out method and all that wordings and all used. Don't get tense, leave it. Okay, this is regarding reference in the audit report only. You know, this reference in audit report is exactly similar to SAE 620 standard. In SAE 620, using the work of auditor's expert, can an auditor refer about auditor's expert name in the auditor's report? No need in case of unmodified opinion. But if you are giving modified opinion based on his findings, to tell the people why you gave a modified opinion, you can refer about his name. That's it. Are you clear? Ultimately, remember, you are only responsible to obtain, you are only responsible for obtaining evidence on controls at service organization, operating effectiveness, everything is your responsibility, primary responsibility. Okay, but since you are unable to verify that, you are taking type 1, type 2 report, you are using it and then concluding. That's it. Clear? Yeah. So with this, 402 3402 is completed. That's it. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed. Please give your comments if at all you thoroughly enjoy, I mean you thoroughly understood. You know, I understand I finished very fast because exam we are getting it. So I tried my level best to bring you some clarity on 402 3402, such a very complex topic. That's it. Yeah, thank you.